Welcome to Green Ball. I'm Marie Crowe. In this episode, we cross to Alan Lewis in South Africa on the latest news from the Women's T20 World Cup. We hear the extended interview with men's head coach Heinrich Malan after the release of the 5 squads last week. And in our segment, Answer Me This, we chat to Ireland Women's Team Operations Manager Beth Healy. Now, on with the show. Now, Alan Lewis, you are very welcome along all the way from sunny South Africa. How are things?
Very good. Lovely and sunny, really hot. You can't ask for more in February, to be honest, Marie.
Absolutely. And you're getting a bit of cricket in as well.
We certainly are. We had a beautiful day and a beautiful ground in Parle yesterday, I have to say. I'm sure the viewers, anyone who was watching, it was just spectacular, to be honest.
Yeah, it's actually great to be able to watch it as well, isn't it? Like just being at home and seeing it, and like even from your point of view with 2 daughters, did you ever think there'd be a time where you'd be watching women's cricket on Sky Sports and, you know, regularly all the time, underage and everything?
Definitely not, Marie, would be the answer to that question. You always live in hope, but it's one of those things. Obviously, it's very proud as a father if your daughter is. Well, both have obviously played. One has chosen the other path, but the other opened the batting yesterday against England. It was great to be there. It
was great. Look, it was great to watch it, but it wasn't the result that they wanted. So it was a 4-wicket defeat to England, their opening game. But it did feel like there were some positives, Alan.
Yes, there were. Well, obviously the start was very positive. Like we were at 82 for 2 in the 12th over. And, you know, you were like, obviously Ireland have, you know, elected to play this type of plan. They went very much at England early on and it was fantastic. Mm-hmm. You know, both Amy Lewis and Gabby have kind of settled in a very understanding partnership. They know each other's game very well. They run very well between the wickets. Gabby Lewis was fortunate early on. She was dropped under difficult chance at point, but they went on. And really at that base, and we were looking at the wicket that was turn. England had 3 spinners. You kind of thought a score of 135, 140 would be very difficult to chase, as was proven in the game afterwards when South Africa bowled New Zealand out for 60 odd. So yes, I thought there was much more positives than negatives, because that's, in a sense, with where Ireland are trying to go, you've got to dwell on. And I think, you know, the overall opinion, they fought hard. Cara Murray bowled as the best I've seen her bowl for Ireland, I would say. Got her 3 wickets for 15. You know, she had a different trajectory on the ball. She bowled at a steady, flat pace, got turn. And, you know, England looked obviously to attack her, and she did really well. I thought her outfielding was generally very good, some excellent catches. But it was just such a disappointing, in a sense, fall from grace. And I know they kind of feel that themselves, but I'm far happier looking from the outside of how they're trying to play. Because, you know, in yesteryear, we would have fiddled and poked around. Obviously, if you look at it in the circumstances, maybe had, you know, Gabby Lewis said to herself, well, look, I'm just going to settle in here. There's 48 balls left. If I face 24 of those, I might be 60 or 70 not out and create, you know, a base for the team to maybe get 130, 140, because it looks to me on the grounds that we're playing at that's the par score, because there's turn a lot of the way. It's so hot here. The wickets are dry. There's not a huge amount of pace in them. And you know what? If you get 140, 150, you will really challenge.
Yeah, like that seems to be the general consensus. All right, they did have that great start, lots of positives to take away from it. But was it a case that England maybe figured them out, got their plan spot on, targeting that middle order?
Not really. Like I think, like if you look at it, you know, the way Orla Prendergast came out from the word go, she wasn't going to let spin settle, and that's what they're trying to do now. You know, the other side of things, if I am being critical to a certain extent, I just thought, overall, we looked to play square of the wicket far too often. It was the go-to shot the whole time. And if you look at the dismissals, that's largely where they came from. You know, Emer came in first ball, looked to play a dab sweep, got herself offside of the ball, LBW, Mary Waldron the same. You know, so and I just thought that was probably one of the things that was a negative for me, and I'm hoping if they take it into the Pakistan game, that's going to be spin heavy again. They might look a little bit more to hit down the ground. Lulu Little hit a beautiful 6 and then was slightly unlucky, went again. But that's the type of area I think they should be looking to attack. So for Ed Joyce coming away from that, is that what he's going to be targeting, going to be working on, learning from it? Yeah, I think, look, at the one thing you're going to do, the hardest thing this team did was they qualified for the World Cup. The other part of this World Cup is Ireland are still in it. New Zealand are gone. And realistically, if you look at it, the next two games, we've got Pakistan, who we've beaten in a series in Pakistan, admittedly in slightly different conditions. They'll have to face a little bit more turn. And a West Indies team, I'm not necessarily going to say in decline, but they've struggled over the course of the last year in terms of their performance. So Ireland will be eyeing those two games. If they can win them and then set up, with confidence a game against India, what could be better than that?
So for our listeners, when I am here interviewing Alan, the Pakistan game will be over. So hopefully anyway that Alan's predictions will have came true and that we'll be heading into that West Indies game with a scalp taken by then. Just a word, you mentioned Mary Waldron there. And again, Alan, just the fact that she became Ireland's most capped player with yesterday's performance, such an achievement and a commitment to her sport.
Absolutely wonderful. And Mary just has been totally committed over that period of time. And she's a great galvanizer amongst the girls as well. I think the one thing, if you look at it, there's 12 of that team that are under 22. And, she's, I don't want to make this sound bad, but she's kind of a motherly figure to them. And she's very much in touch with their humour and how they operate. And they're a very happy bunch. That's the one thing I get. I never got the sense in talking to any of them that, they're always looking at the next best thing, not the worst thing. And that's often within a team and a fabric of a team. If you're setting a strategy, which Ed is clearly wanting to do, about how they play their cricket, what we've enjoyed is the way they've gone about it. And that's the most important thing if you're looking to progress. Because bear in mind, we haven't been to a World Cup for a number of years. We've got here. We've got teams that we've beaten in the past, and we've won games against the top nations. So I think there's two crucial things within that. Obviously, the full-time contracts has been a huge plus because they've just so much more time to work on things and work on the cricket that Ed can work with his players and the things that he's trying to get them to achieve. And I think that's the most wonderful thing for me. And I kind of see that desire within them all to get better. And that's going to be evident as we push on with this evolution.
So break it down for us, Alan. What are you seeing that they're doing differently? Like what's the progress?
Well, the progress is their attacking ball. Like if you saw Amy Hunter, first ball smashes Siva Brunt through the covers. About 3 balls later, she's down the wicket, hitting her down the ground for 4. That wouldn't have happened 5 years ago. So, in a sense, everything is in essence about going after the bowling. All the Prendergast the same. 2 balls into her innings, she's down the wicket looking to hit straight. I prefer to see that in essence of playing, let's call it less risk than, like obviously the execution of a sweep shot. They all go to this sweep shot very, very regularly. And again, with the way the top sides look at players and look at people and how they go about things, they're going to analyse Ireland maybe a little bit differently. But in terms of how we're going about our shot making, I think the other thing, if you look at it in the warm-up games, when I look at progress on the basis that 6 players had strike rates over 100. That was unheard of 5 years ago. Unheard of. So, you've got all at 120, you've got Gabby Lewis at 117, you've got Amy Hunter at nearly 100. You've got Lulu Little in the 2 games she played. She got 11 off 8. She got 20 off 15. In T20 cricket, they are massive contributions. So that's the way Ed is pushing the focus of this team of where they want to try and go to. And I think it's the right approach.
So by the end of this World Cup, what would be success for them?
I think success for them definitely would be if they beat Pakistan and the West Indies. That would be a huge success. I think the fact that they fought yesterday, I'm not necessarily going to say England had nerves. They didn't have nerves, but England would be sitting in that dressing room saying, we lost 6 wickets yesterday in chasing 108. Ireland can take that into the next game and say to themselves, you know what, we're here for the fight. There was some very good out cricket. I thought some excellent catching, a good run out. So, it's easy to dwell on the negative, any of these sorts of things. And they know what it is. We had a massive collapse. We were 23 for 8. So, that's massive. And that's something that I'm sure they will be looking to address and hopefully, varying the point of attack between, as I said to you, shots square of the wicket as opposed to ones down the ground.
For you then, Alan, being over there, it must be a great experience. Lots of family members cheering on the team.
Yeah, there's a really good Irish support here, not just families, but other people who've made the trip. It's not hard to like Cape Town, Marie. I will tell you that. It's very easy. And the other side of things is we were at the opening game of the tournament. There was 15 to 18,000 at it. That's where the women's game has gone. Mm-hmm. And I have to tell you, from where it was 5-10 years ago as an attractive proposition, these girls are producing a fantastic product at the moment, and it's just getting better and better and better. And it's really good to watch. Friday night was so exciting, some real risk and reward cricket, to see the excitement, the joy and all that. And that's what it embodies. And again, that's the type of thing I think that lures, people to the game. Those mm-hmm. Orla would be a very good example. She could be, funnily enough, at a soccer World Cup. She's at a cricket World Cup. That's the choice she's made.
Alan Lewis, thank you so much for joining us. Enjoy the rest of the trip. Holidays suit you, that's for sure. And I'm going to get on to Heatley about taking Green Ball on tour. Hopefully we might make it to Cape Town sometime. Now we cross to Nathan Johns from the Irish Times, where he was chatting to men's head coach Heinrich Malan.
Delighted to be joined by Ireland head coach Heinrich Malan as the 5 squads for the upcoming tours to Bangladesh and Sri Lanka are announced. 2 ODI squads, T20 squads and 2 test squads. I mean, that's the headline, isn't it? It's those 2 test match squads, particularly the first one for Bangladesh. I'm wondering if you could talk me through a little bit the thought process and the selection process, because some of those guys haven't played any first class cricket, yep. And the ones that haven't played first class cricket in 4 years. So it's
well, you say that, and I did the numbers. 10 out of the 15 people that are part of those 2 squads have not played Test cricket. So potentially we have 10 people that could debut. Doesn't mean the first time they play for Ireland, but it's the first time they could play Test cricket. So look, at the one end it's an exciting challenge, but at the other end it's a pretty daunting challenge, thinking we haven't played a lot of red ball cricket. Look, I guess it's trying to work back from looking at people that have been playing consistent cricket over periods of time, and then trying to marry that up with the conditions that we're trying to go to, and hence we've got a couple of guys in there that haven't necessarily played a lot of cricket, but we see the skill set that we're looking for, and we've got the opportunity to go and test it out and see what they can give us in the long run.
And so what are you looking for from your on-field product with this selection? Because even in the last year, we were talking a minute ago about the focus has been on T20 a lot in the last year. I think you played six ODIs only in 2022. So even that longer format and seeing how that might translate to Test cricket, that's quite difficult. So how do you find that balance?
Yeah, look, I guess there's still a little bit of work for us to be done. And a big part of our preparation at the moment is working towards that understanding of how we want to operate and what does it look like, and how people get an individual understanding of the way we want to try and play as a team and as a unit. I think, since I've took over this role, there was one of the key things around the short formats that we were trying to be really clear about, and it's nothing different than red ball cricket. The cool piece around it all is that it's a blank canvas. We've got a bit of work to do in that space, but it's an exciting opportunity and it's an exciting space for us to work in. And look, Baz ball or whatever ball is the key phrase at the moment. And look, we're not necessarily going to try and play like anyone else. I think that's the challenge, and that's the key messaging that we have within our environment at the moment is, we want our players to go out there and figure out what it is like playing, red ball cricket. And it doesn't mean we've got to block, it doesn't mean we've got to, play T20 cricket. There's got to be a balance in all of that. And, will there be a couple of hiccups along the way? Probably, but there'll also be some good periods. And we've shown we've got a really exciting squad of players that are coming through. And red ball cricket's the next little frontier that we're gonna face, and we're really looking forward to that little challenge.
You mentioned styles and watching other teams there, and obviously England is the big red ball style that I'm not sure if teams trying to copy them, but certainly something's going to have to shift if teams are going to keep up with them, I suspect. More aggressive white ball cricket the last 12 months, certainly. Do you envisage in Ireland playing a kind of aggressive red ball style as well? Yeah,
look, I guess if you look at the players we've got players that are playing a white ball brand that is that exciting, aggressive sort of style. And look, I guess that's where we've got to try and find that balance within our red ball space too. But again, it comes back to a little bit of exposure, a little bit of experience. playing what's in front of us in terms of the conditions, the opposition, the scoreboard. And I guess, that's nothing different to some of the conversations we've had within the T20 realm and the one-day realm. And now we just got to be able to identify that and do it for periods of time in the red ball space. So, look, that's part of our development within a squad context. We've got people who's played Test cricket before, even though they haven't done it lately. And that's the exciting piece. It's using all of that information again from a squad perspective and making sure that people, get clarity around how we want them to go about their business and have an impact in the game.
When's the last time some of these guys have even held a red ball or faced a red ball? Like, when do you start?
Yesterday.
You started yesterday. Okay.
Yeah. Obviously, we've got a huge focus at the moment around our training from a red ball point of view.
When did that start?
When we got back from Zimbabwe. We had a period since the World Cup when we returned that we were working towards going to Zimbabwe. And then, we had a bit of a break there over Christmas and then Zimbabwe and now the red ball focus. And I guess, it's working back from the understanding of conditions. We know it's going to turn and spin and what does that look like from a batting point of view? What does it mean from a bowling point of view? We always focus on the batting side of things. It could be turning or it could be, staying low or slow. But, people have got to learn to bowl in those conditions too. The seamers play a different role in those sort of conditions as well. They've got to be more accurate. They've got to be more skillful. They've got to be more patient, which I think if you add all of those things together, it's a nice little mix of training at the moment to, not necessarily neglect the white ball side of things. We've added a couple of constraints in there where, within a session, you got to do some white ball hitting, but then you've got to go and do, bat out the day in the red ball space. So it's just trying to find some challenging environments for our players to keep growing the game, which is, it's that's where we as coaches really do our work.
And then, I guess that's the challenge of the modern cricketer, isn't it? I mean, half the 2 or 3 lads are going to be coming from white ball franchises to white ball tours to test cricket match. I don't think that's just the way the game is at the minute, range hitting into
100%. And you talk about adaptability and you talk about players that are playing what's in front of them. But I guess that's always where we talk as staff. Now that becomes part of our roles to ensure that we expose these players, even if it is in an indoor environment, to be able to think on their feet, have a conversation around what that looks like with their partner, put a plan in place and then commit to that. And it's no different to, all the other conversations we've had, at the World Cup a couple of months ago or, potentially in a couple of weeks when we go to Bangladesh or Sri Lanka.
You mentioned the spin there. I think from the outside looking in, the biggest question marks were over what the spin attack would look like. I think everyone knows you're going to pick 2 or 3 seamers. I think a lot of people might have predicted who those were. Top order batters. Again, people had a decent idea about what that spin attack would look like. And obviously it looks very different now with young Matt Humphreys in there. What have you seen from him that's made you give him the nod?
Look, first and foremost, he bowls left arm, which I think it's something that we cried for from a skill set point of view. The other thing that we really took into account is when he played for Ireland under 19 at the World Cup, he was the go-to guy in that environment. He bowled in every phase. Showed that he's a competitor. Showed that he can take wickets. So I guess when you look at it from that point of view, he's got all the traits and the attributes that we're looking for, and hence putting him in a wider squad environment where hopefully he gets some game time at some stages, but also. We're working back from some pinnacle events when you think about where the T20 World Cup's going to be in 2024 in the West Indies and in America. That those sort of surfaces are going to assist that sort of skill set. We know that the One Day World Cup's in India. Again, looking for that sort of skill set. So with those sort of pinnacle events in mind, we're trying to work back and use some of these tours, just like we've done in the past year and in the Zimbabwe tour, to expose some players and give them opportunity and hopefully grow that squad of depth that we have and create some healthy competition.
So that would suggest, maybe you mentioned left arm, would that suggest, George, you're going to rely a little bit less on George Dockrell's left armers?
Look, I think George has done a good job for us in white ball cricket, but I think when you think of Hump, he's an out and out left arm spinner. And you think about Test cricket. Test cricket for me is all about those special or specialists, and that's what he brings to the party. George obviously started his career as a bowler.
He was a gun first class red ball for Somerset.
He's still the white ball leading wicket taker for Ireland to this day.
Yeah.
But his career has also, transformed into different spheres now. And look, he's still a huge part of bowling for us in white ball cricket. And, it doesn't mean he's not going to bowl in red ball cricket. He potentially can and will. But I guess it's also looking, with a view of the future and making sure we've got some of those specialists in place.
PJ Moore, outside looking in, you can't not pick a guy with that Test record, considering the experience. And he averages a decent lick, batting 7 and keeping wicket, and also he's kept wicket in Test cricket, whereas someone like Lorcan hasn't before. So that was the thinking there.
Yeah, 100%. And he's played a bit of Test cricket in Bangladesh, which again, when you talk about some experience in that middle order, he brings that to the party, and it's nice to have someone in the wings that could come in with a bit of experience, with relevant information around what it's like, to just bolster that experience side of things as well. He will be one of those 10 guys, which I mentioned earlier, that hasn't played for Ireland yet. But look, he has played international cricket, and it's nice to have someone of that calibre in and around our environment.
Then maybe some other names. Obviously, the big omission from the Test squad is Paul. Was that his own decision, or was that something that you guys came to?
Well, look, it was a mutual discussion over more than one coffee, to be honest. And it's all about the well-being piece and making sure that we find a balance between him playing for Ireland and obviously some of his commitments that he has around the leagues. This year with a big white ball focus in terms of a pinnacle event in the World Cup, we got to that sort of agreement that up until the World Cup, he will only play white ball cricket for us and all white ball games for us. And in the same breath, get a little bit of a balance from a well-being point of view with him missing some of that Test cricket, which again, it creates some opportunities for some lads that we want to see in there, and hopefully they hit the ground running as well.
And then good to see Craig Young back. Obviously, he's playing T20, and then you're building him up into ODI. It looks pretty clear that's a load management thing from how you bring him back.
Yeah, look, Young, he's started bowling, even though it's at a very low level at this stage. And I guess this was just part of that management plan. Look, again, when you think about pinnacle event over the next couple of months, we got Bangladesh, obviously, over in Chelmsford. So I guess at this point in time, working back from that and trying to get a full squad available for selection, of which Youngie plays a huge part. He hasn't played a lot throughout the last sort of 6 months. But it's all part of working him back into being available, fully fit, and able to be in a squad of 13 or 14 when we try and put that squad together.
Your fast bowling stocks are being tested. You've made the decision to rest Mark Adair for the Sri Lanka tour. So Matt Foster comes in. Were there any other names who are in and around in those fast bowling stocks who you might have been looking at for that slot as well?
Look, I think it's the same sort of conversation there with Sparky and with Mark. We're looking at him not playing in Sri Lanka with a bit of well-being piece, but also resting in recovery to hit the ground running against Bangladesh in the World Super League points. Look, Fion's obviously in and around that space as well. And I guess that's a bit of a focus for us in the background at the moment, without giving too much away around, trying to establish a bit of a future Ireland Seamers group. So looking at your 17s, 19s, 21-year-olds and get them to be in and around our environment on a more regular basis. Working with Ryan Eagleson, spending time with Josh when he gets back from an IPL excursion, and just grow their understanding of where the game's going, and then working back from what current strengths they have and what areas we need to put a bit of work in.
Are there any? So you mentioned Fionn who would be in that group potentially. Are there any other names that you think are in maybe the immediate, the long term?
Look, Connor's in there as well.
But he's in these squads.
Yeah, and again, like for Connor, it's just working back towards how we get him fully fit. He brings a point of difference, and I think that's the exciting part that we're looking for in building our squad and getting a bowling unit together that complements each other is about having a point of difference, and Youngie brings a point of difference, Connor brings a point of difference, and hopefully in time we can keep finding guys who can, the name you mentioned earlier, guy who can bowl 150.
Yeah.
If we can have a couple of those lads jump out of the woods, that'll be awesome.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you about Connor and his role, because from the outside looking in, he would fill a hole that, if you look at the other white ball teams in the world that are doing really successful, I think the point of difference is they've got someone in the middle overs who's the Liam Plunkett type, the Ollie Stone recent in the ODIs type, bit of extra pace, just can still create threats. Maybe that's kind of something that it looks like when you don't bring Josh back for a few overs, it's not necessarily there. Is that something that Connor could do?
100%. I think if you work back from the T20 festivals last year, he is the guy within, even if he had some of the Ireland players playing, that creates the most false shots throughout that middle block. And 100%, it aids to our thinking around, even if you look at the Zimbabwe, series that's just gone by. We did it to them. We just, batted through that middle block and then banked up to accumulate at the back end, whether it's T20 or one-day cricket. And I guess, the game is showing us that, especially in one-day cricket, you've got to have people between overs 15 and 35 to take wickets. If you don't, that 35 onwards becomes hard work, and 100%. But in the same breath, I think that's where, an out-and-out spinner in that space too becomes...
Generally a wrist spinner.
That's why you'll see Ben White's name in some of these squads, 100%, So Whitey comes into that same sort of thinking around, can we create some opportunities for these lads to come in and show us, one, what they have, but also two, build their exposure and experience piece.
Another name who comes up frequently, and I know he's not in the country, he's the other side of the world, but that people from the outside think could offer that point of difference is David. Is it at this stage, is it purely cricketing reasons that he kind of doesn't get looked in, or is it because he's on the other side of the world?
No, not because he's on the other side of the world at all. Look, we've had some really good discussion at the end of the summer around, we want to see that point of difference, which I don't think I've seen at all this year from him. And, I think there's been a period there where Cricket Ireland, offered him a contract and he didn't accept it. So is there a little bit of work in both sides of that coin to still be done, whether it's on field or field? And hopefully we can keep assisting in that space as well. But first and foremost, from a cricketing point of view, I'd like to still think that we want to see a little bit more of, that point of difference, which I think people have spoken about in the past, but we haven't necessarily seen over the last sort of 12 to 18 months.
Okay. Do you keep an eye on players like that? Not just him, there's lots of players in Australia. Do you keep an eye on that?
Yeah, there's quite a few boys who play for Randy Peets, obviously, where we've just been. And Pete Johnson, our pathway manager from a player point of view, keeping tabs with those boys quite regularly, which is, we try and get our support staff to have some contact with these lads, because at the end of the day, we've only got a small amount of a player pool, and, I think the one thing we have seen, and then we will see over these next 12 months, is, we've picked 22 players to go on these 7-week tours. The 7-week tour, can guarantee you we'll use more than 22 up until the end of the year. That's just what's in front of us. So a big part of what we try and do is ensure that it's not just about the 22 contract players or however many it is. It's about making sure that we know what's coming, and start putting some resources and time into that space as well.
What does a successful tour look like? Obviously, the one-day cricket is priority with World Cup year and T20 qualifiers as well. What does success look like in the test matches? I think people have low expectations because it's such a new format and the conditions will be so alien and difficult.
Yeah, look, at the end of the day, success is always about winning and losing, isn't it? Yeah. That's the obvious thing. But look, there's going to be a real challenge for us in terms of finding some clarity around how we want to play. And then, like we've done over the last sort of 12 months, we know that it's about the outcome, but it's focusing on that performance piece and that process around, do we create consistency in our communication? Are players actually playing what's in front of them? Do they have the skills to do that? How do we transfer pressure when we're under pressure? That sort of, consistency in our communication piece. So, look, those are the sort of parameters that, we'll create as a group again when we go there and talk about the performance side of things. But always understanding that, if things don't go well and the outcomes are not the outcomes that we're looking for in terms of the result piece, that there'll be questions asked. And I guess then it comes back to, are we really clear and making sure that we look after the process.
Is it at all strange that this is such a monumental occasion for Irish cricket, the return to Test cricket, but yet it's important, but it's not what's fundamentally going to define your year. It's qualification for India and those qualifiers in Scotland. So it's not that it lessen the occasion, but is it a little bit strange that, as fantastic as it is, that's not the be all and end all this year? Look,
I guess it's part of us being really clear around some of our pinnacle events and what those are, and you've just highlighted them there, all those sort of white ball tick-offs, depending on how it goes against Bangladesh. You got the qualifiers in Zimbabwe, we got the T20 qualifiers straight after that, hopefully the World Cup, and then again the World Cup in the West Indies T21. So you work back from those. the context of this tour is built around the white ball side of things, but then there's also, the real excitement around getting back into Test cricket. And hopefully we can play more red ball cricket, whether it's, domestically, whether it's in the Wolves program, whether it's exposing more players in our Test squad, to build that base that, in 2 or 3 years' time, we don't just compete in white ball cricket, but we actually, across formats, and it's something that I've spoken about previously, build that consistency across 3 formats, so, that we don't necessarily just push every now and again the envelope, but we do that on a consistent basis.
How long do you think it takes to get to that stage?
At this stage, from a red ball point of view, it's a great question, isn't it?
Yeah.
And I don't think there's an answer for that.
Yeah.
At least we're making a start in that space. I think one of the most important pieces in that space is when you speak to our young players, when you speak to Harry Tector, when you speak to Josh Little, they want to play Test cricket. How that fits in over the next 12 months is still what we're trying to balance out. But I think as long as we can keep that fire burning within the young lads, that it's still Test cricket that's the pinnacle, then we're on the right track.
You mentioned Josh. I don't think anybody really begrudges him for missing these Test matches, because the opportunity he has is fantastic. And I know Test cricket is the pinnacle, but the reality is, at the end of the day, if a guy gets an IPL contract, he's going to take that up 9 times out of 10. As a squad, do you have to have any conversations about that type of thing, about understanding that these opportunities are too good to pass up, or did they just take that as given? No,
I think there's a real understanding at this stage that it's a life-changing opportunity, especially when you get drafted in the IPL. So I don't think we've got too many of those, conversations at the moment, and everyone's, just wishing him well, and in hope that he, does himself proud in that competition. But like I said, I think it's over time, we'll have more and more of these tough conversations. And to be fair, that'll be a great thing, because that means that our players are consistently performing at the biggest stage or international cricket, because they do get drafted in all these leagues now. But at the moment, just trying to find that balance between, playing for Ireland, which gives you the opportunity to get drafted in all these leagues, and also playing in all these leagues. And look, it's going to be different conversations for different players. And I think if you look at the way we've gone about our business as well, in terms of being clear what our pinnacle events are, having people around at certain points and times, we can find a bit of a balance where we can expose people to gain more exposure and experience, bring it back into our environment, and keep growing our player pool.
Yeah, there certainly is a very clear strategy around that, and the give and take and case-by-case basis, which I think is healthy. And last one from me. You're coaching red ball again. It's been a while since that's happened. What challenges does that bring as a coach differently for you, and what about coaching a red ball side are you most looking forward to from that coaching perspective?
Honestly, I just love red ball cricket. And like you say, I haven't done it for probably 12, 13 months now since I've left my Auckland job. I just think it's the simplicity around 4-day cricket, and the ability to stick to task for such periods of time. And that task could be playing T20 style within a 4-day game because you want to set up the game, or within a test swerve, you got to block the day out. You got to save the test. So I guess it's working back from that and making sure that our players are conditioned and trained for that. You talk about the conditioning. We've evolved our way of thinking as well from a purely conditioning point of view, knowing where we're going. So there's a little bit more running as opposed to making sure we're strong in the gym, purely because we know we're going to Sri Lanka, Bangladesh, it's hot. It'll take out of people. We haven't had people being on their feet, for days as opposed to hours playing a T20 or 1-day game. And I think that's an exciting part of us as a staff as well, and evolving our thinking. But look, to come back to your question, 4-day cricket is about the simplicity, and keeping things on task for periods of time. And looking coming off white ball cricket, where it's being adaptable, being ahead of the game the whole time, it's how do we bring that sort of mindset towards the 4-day side or the test side of things, but ensuring we can do that for periods of time, which, it's a great challenge to look forward to.
Now it's time for Answer Me This, and I'm delighted to say that Beth Healy, Ireland Women's Team Operations Manager, joins me now all the way from South Africa. How are you, Beth?
Yeah, doing great. Enjoying the weather, certainly.
Okay, go on, tell us. What's it like? Is it just beautiful over there?
Yeah, Cape Town is just a fantastic location. It's a great setting for a World Cup. The scenery, the mountains, the weather is perfect. Touch wood, actually, the rain stays away, because I think in Potch and other parts of the country it's horrendous. So, touch wood, we haven't brought that with us yet.
Okay, and is the forecast coming your way, or should you be okay?
No, we should be okay for the next week or so where our games are. Yeah.
Okay, not too bad. So, Beth, tell us first of all, what does a team operations manager do?
Oh, wow. It's a pretty long list, but we'll start with day-to-day operations of the team, training schedules. It can look a little bit different when you're on tour to off tour. So off tour would be admin days, making sure the logistical arrangements, pre-planning, prep camps, training camps, domestic tours, international tours, and then also we deal with all the ICC events. So just putting all those good logistical arrangements in place. And then when you're on tour, it's match day duties, and in general, looking after the team and making sure everybody is where they need to be at the right time.
It sounds like you need good organizational skills and a lot of patience.
Yes, that's two key skills, 100%.
So when you are away, then what's your typical day look like?
A match day can be, it can be quite calm in the morning, just organising the team. Everything's pretty much set in stone, and you're kind of just waiting for if anything pops up or if the bus doesn't work or there's a breakdown, somebody's forgotten their playing shirts, you've got to arrange, to go back to the hotel and pick them up. It could be a player's fallen ill, there's an injury in the warm-up. It's basically you're just on hand for any type of crisis management, as I would like to put it.
So when you think about your job and what you expected it to be, was there anything that surprised you about the role?
I knew I was walking into a team and it would be exciting because we were almost on the rebuilding phase when I joined in 2019. And it was exciting to be part of that, but I didn't realize how good a crack the team are, and that inclusivity period of it is it's great. It makes it worthwhile because you do have hard days, and there has been some over the past 4 years, but the good days are just so good, and it's a pretty cool job, if I'm honest.
Yeah. Is there anything that would really entertain us? Anything that you've done or anything you've got up to?
There's been a few hiccups. We've had some passports left in seat planes. I've probably ran about a kilometre through an airport before to run back and get this passport, and they know exactly who that is. Another one is leaving Zimbabwe as well during the Omicron. We got evacuated in 2021, so that was a pretty hairy experience. We were in Zimbabwe, we went to Namibia, then Oman was the only country that would let us in. So we waited there for a couple of hours, and then we got another flight back to Dublin, and then we had a quarantine period as well. So yeah, that was wild.
Oh my gosh, yeah, I remember that happening all right. It actually feels like a whole other world ago, doesn't it?
Yeah, I know. It literally feels like a decade ago, which is probably where it needs to stay.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so we're going to get into our kind of set questions now. What do you most enjoy about cricket?
Oh, I think it's such a variable game. I often hear the phrase, cricket is so silly, because there's so many variables that can happen. You don't know whether it's going to swing one way or the other way. Even with the match against England yesterday, it was like, well, hold on here, a couple more wickets and this is going to change for the good. So I think the best thing is it's always on the cards, and you can't write anybody off. There's no guarantee because it's ball by ball. Yeah.
So growing up then, who was your sporting hero?
Oh, when I was growing up, I actually played tennis. So it would have been Serena and Venus Williams, hands down. I was always watching tennis. So no, it would have been either of those.
Wow. So tennis, was there anything else or just tennis?
I would have watched soccer when I was younger, but there was no, in all honesty, there was no female athletes to aspire to. So even the likes when I was playing soccer when I was a kid, you couldn't be like, oh, I can play in the Premier League. The highest division was Division 1, but now some of the players I played with at youth level are actually playing in the Women's Super League, which is really cool. So
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, it's cool.
I'd say growing up, you never imagined that we would have a Women's Super League to the level that we have, and the Champions League and the Euros and the World Cup getting so much attention from a football perspective.
Never imagined it. Always hoped it would be like that. And you always, you used to watch the World Cup and be like, but when is why is there no women? Or why you couldn't see them, but now you can. And I just think little girls growing up, it must be so cool to be in that era.
Absolutely. My kids play. I've only got boys, but there's a little girl on one of their teams, and she's adorable. And I'd say to her, "Who are you going to play for when you grow up, Saoirse?" And she's like, "I haven't decided yet. Maybe PSG, maybe Man City, maybe Chelsea." And it's like a real dream for a 7-year-old girl to follow that path, and she can see it the whole way along. It's amazing.
Yeah, I love that. Like that's just so cool, because I'm in that generation of where it like kind of changed, you know, when born in the 90s, and then you go through that internet era, and then it's like, oh my God, you move from floppy disks to like USBs and Bluetooth and stuff. So just to see that change, and then it's like that next generation coming up. Yeah, it's cool.
Yeah, they're going to have so much opportunity. It's so exciting. So what does the perfect day look like for you?
Oh, everybody turns up on time. Everything runs smoothly. I'm not having to chase people. So, yeah, I'd say if everybody does their jobs well, my job's very easy, because I think I'm pretty much chasing other people most of the time.
I'd say so. And if you were to switch off, then what would you like to do? If you're having a day off, what would it look like?
Oh, I do love a bit of retail therapy. So you get to travel to these different countries, have a look in the shops, see if you can get a bargain. And also just seeing the countries as well. So like in Cape Town, we've been to Camps Bay, been up Table Mountain. We're planning some wine tasting, and hopefully we'll get to Boulders Beach as well to see the penguins.
Oh, lovely. I'd say you'd really want to enjoy traveling in your job.
Oh yeah, certainly. Yeah, you got to be fit to tour for 3 or 4 weeks at a time. And you know, your loved ones at home, they mean so much to you, but you're often away for long periods. You're missing those weddings, those birthdays, those special occasions. So you've got to, you know, I've got a great team on tour. The support staff are great crack. We've been together for like the last 4 years, and so it's like a family away from home.
Yeah, that really helps, I think, when you're surrounded by good people. So what's the best piece of advice that you received that has helped you do your job better?
In all honesty, it's probably to stay solution focused, and knowing that at the end of like an absolute chaos day, I can close my hotel door and just go, oh my, this happens. But on the forefront, they probably don't know the half of it at the same time. So it's just keeping that. Often the team say, like, I've got a really good poker face. So hopefully that lasts.
All right. So keep working on your poker face. I like that. So I have some quick fire questions to finish, and you can just answer them as you feel appropriate. So mullets, nifty or naff?
Naff.
I love mullets. Sledging, part of it or park it?
Part of it.
Yeah. Your favorite day in your job?
Rest days. Getting to see the country you're in.
Sounds good. The song that you have played most in the last month?
Oh, I think it's Pink, Never Gonna Dance Again.
Oh yeah, I like that one. A bit of Pink. I'm liking Miley Cyrus's new song as well. The movie that you have watched and enjoyed the last movie you watched and enjoyed?
Triple Frontier on Netflix.
Oh.
It was really good.
Good recommendation. Like that. Beth, thank you so much for joining us. Enjoy the rest of the trip over there, as much as you can anyway, because you're working. I always forget that people are working when they're away, even though it seems like they're on holidays. But do enjoy it. Yeah. Thanks so much for joining me and coming on the podcast. We really appreciate it, and we look forward to seeing how the rest of the World Cup goes.
Cheers. Thanks so much.
Thanks for listening, and join us again in the next show to discuss the Women's T20 World Cup, and we explore some fascinating stories from the recent Club Cup draws. Don't forget to subscribe to the show, also rate and leave a review, as it really helps other fans find us. And if you have any questions, you can email us at thegreenballshow@gmail.com, and we'll do our best to find an answer. Farewell for now.